I play Dex Perios on Stumptown. I am an ex-Marine. I have been out of the service now for about 10 years, and I've been sort of floating ever since my time in the military. She lives in Portland, which is a wonderful town. She hasn't been able to hold down really a steady job. And the idea of becoming a PI is brought to her by a Miles Hoffman, who is one of our detective characters. Dex is, she's a very complicated woman and does not apologize for that. This is a woman who suffers from PTSD and chooses not to deal with it, has sort of shelved it her entire life since things have happened to her. She has a drinking problem. She has a gambling problem. She's like a person who lives in the moment. She is a woman who cannot hold a relationship. We're exploring her sexuality. She likes men. She likes women. She's sort of up for whatever the night will invite her to be a part of. So she's floating a little bit, and it's certainly one of the things that makes her a bit dangerous. But I also think that because of that, she's very, she adapts to situations, and she knows people really well because she's been through a lot. It is a procedural in the sense that there are going to be cases throughout the series. They're not necessarily going to be wrapped up tidily at the end of each episode. They will probably carry on through multiple episodes. Certainly the characters that we meet on those cases will probably come back, will stay with us for multiple episodes. So it is not your typical sort of network procedural show. It is, we talk a lot about characters first, and when a case comes up, it's more about how the case affects the dynamics between the characters rather than what the case is about each week. This is obviously a woman who has experienced something very, very traumatic. Lives were lost in that experience. But I think it's relative, and I think that when you go through something that is traumatizing and you experience a loss or you experience something in your personal life, you're affected by it. And I think that we're all sort of dealing with some kind of PTSD in our lives. So that was an easy thing for me to sort of break down and mentally hone in on personally. And then it's about, in terms of the show, layering it in a believable, grounded way where this is a person who is dealing with this and not dealing with this, who is dealing with the symptoms of this. Cameron and Tantu, they're the bosses of what they do. They've worked really hard to get to where they are. They're both very good at what they do. And I think that for my character, it is inspiring. I think that Dex has never really liked authority, and both of them are very authoritative women. So I think that she struggles with that, but I think in the end, what we'll benefit from is hopefully seeing Dex grow and learn from these women, and certainly the audience will benefit from seeing these women portrayed on screen in such a wonderful, powerful way.
The description of this show is Cobie Smulders plays a private investigator, and she's got to figure out cases, and we're all the characters who surround her life. When I met with Jason on our show, our showrunner, he said that Gray's a character that when you meet him, what you first see is not what you get, and you learn more and more, and he's a guy who has a dark past and has a lot of secrets, and I've been having a lot of fun playing that storyline. And what pulled me to Stumptown was there's not a character in the show who's not interesting, and there's not a character in the show whose backstory I want to see more of, and I think the audience will too. So it's just deep with talent. I know what I've had a lot of fun with while making it so far is just the mix of tone. In that in a scene we'll have some jokes, we'll have some drama, we'll have some action. That there really is a nice mix so far. And I think our writers are doing a great job of moving story while also stopping every once in a while to have a little bit of fun. So I think it'll be a show that if the audience gives it a chance, they'll feel like they really know these characters. But then they'll be able to go on journeys and adventures that I've been surprised we're allowed to do in a weekly show. Character aspect of our show is something that really intrigued me in it because I don't think I'm fully in all the procedural stuff. I think Gray's character was really brought in just for character and just to, give an extra layer to Dex. And then when you know more about his story and the crimes he was involved in, it's just to add complexity to the whole world. So the serialization of it all is more Cobie's journey, and I'm one of the characters who just kind of add a tone and flavor to it, I think.
About this woman who kind of falls into this default private investigator role. She is kind of confronted with issues that she's dealing with from her past, and she's struggled, trying to hold down a job. And then, like most alcoholics, you find this moment of clarity in you find your purpose in something you're good at, and obviously that makes you want to do more of it. And what's interesting is to watch her kind of navigate this world and at the same time deal with and navigate her own personal demons. My character has some issues from his past that he hasn't quite resolved. So in essence, he has his own PTSD that he's got to kind of work around. And at the same time, navigating this kind of, what would I call it? Interesting dynamic. I wouldn't call it a relationship. I call it an interesting dynamic between Hoffman and Dex. And I think it's like nothing I've ever played with before in television and film. That's why I think it's actually fresh to call it a dynamic. You know what I mean? Until further notice, I'd call it a dynamic. People will see that our show it has a tone to it that is rooted in the graphic novel world. So it's not always based in realism so much as it is this graphic novel world. And that's something that I think kind of lifts up the tone of the show from other shows that are out there and somewhat more grounded in reality. Cast is great. I mean, I do a lot with, as Cameron Manheim refers to them, the badass women of the show. And so I do a lot with a lot of scenes with Cobie, a lot of scenes with Cameron. And, it's fun. It's so much fun to kind of play with, people who are not only just professional actors, but have a great sense of humor and comedic timing so that we can really kind of bounce off each other like jazz. So it's been kind of cool in that way. There's definitely an interesting tone to the show. There are some procedural elements for sure, in that there will be cases that kind of come and go. But at the end of the day, I think everybody will hold on to these characters and want to come back week after week to watch these particular characters and see how they handle not only whatever's in front of them case-wise, but also what it is that has been eating at them, you know what I mean, from the time we start the show till whenever we finish.